Welcome back to Lattes Art, presented by J Squared Atelier. This is where creativity is brewed bold and the conversations go deep. I'm your host, James William Moore, and today we're taking a look at the topic that every artist wrestles with, whether we've talked about it or not. My guest is the brilliant Shannon Borg, artist, writer, certified life coach, and a powerful guide for creatives learning to navigate the messy, magnificent world of artistic identity. Shannon's journey is extraordinary, from a life in writing to reinventing herself at 50, to embracing art school with curiosity, courage, and a whole new relationship with time and the creative mind. Today, we'll explore imposter syndrome, embracing your artistic voice, how our past shapes our work, and how shifting our mindset, yes, even around time, can alter our creative lives. Shannon brings humor, research, lived experience, and practical wisdom, and I cannot wait for you to hear this conversation. So grab your latte, settle in, and let's get inspired. Shannon, I really want to thank you for joining me today. This is great. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You have this amazing background, and so everyone kind of has a basis of who you are. Could you kind of introduce yourself for us, please?
Sure. And when you say, first, thanks for having me. And second of all, when you say amazing background, you just mean I went in so many circuitous directions with my life and ended up here. Right. So yeah, I will give you the short version. I grew up in Spokane, Washington, very Mormon family from Utah, you know, and so very kind of strict family, but also very, very interested in the arts, very, very interested in reading. And so I was always sort of like trained to look out there and see what's going on in the world, which I did. And so by the time I was 17, I wanted to sort of, go to college and see the world and then go to England. And I worked in a pub right after college. Then I moved to San Francisco and I've moved all over. I actually have a book that's not published yet called 26 Kitchens. And it's all the kitchens or all the homes that I've lived in. And that was a really fun thing to do because it gives you this idea of like, wow, all of the places you've been that have sort of nourished you and brought you on this path. And I was a writer for many years. I have a PhD in English and an MFA in poetry. Then I wrote for Seattle Magazine and other magazines. I wrote for the web, when that was big, writing reviews for Amazon on kitchen products. They would like send a box to my doorstep and I would type up the review of the image of the, product. And then next week I would get another one and they would pay me for that before blogging and before customer reviews. It's crazy. So I was a writer for a long time, did a lot of freelancing and different things, but really always wanted to be a visual artist. And finally, after, many other roads, ended up in the San Juan Islands in Washington State and started making art very sort of slowly. I lived near an oyster farm and I would draw the oysters and I loved oysters because I had lived in Seattle and, in the wine and food business. And so that was kind of part of my world and I collected them and started drawing them because I was so vulnerable about my drawing and my art. I really didn't start doing this seriously until I was 50. I'd taken painting classes here and there, but really kind of thrown away everything I'd made because I felt so vulnerable about what I made and my mark making and I was no good and all that kind of stuff. Right. So then I got to the point where I really wanted to learn. And so I went back to art school at Gage Academy in Seattle for 2 years and then ended up getting certified as a life coach, starting coaching artists, and then going back for an MFA in painting. So that's kind of the short version. And now I'm in Southern Illinois, finishing up my MFA, and then I'll go home to the island in June.
Wow. Reinventing yourself at 50. That's,
Yeah.
I was late to school. I never did college. Like, you talked about how you saw this world that was out there and school was an avenue to get you moving to it. That wasn't my story, but I'm one of them that I finally got around to doing college in my mid to late 40s.
Oh,
And,
I love that.
here I am with my BFA and my MFA late in life. And, that brings me to a question about that. What surprised you most about returning to school later in life?
Well, when I was young, I was a mess. In my head, in my life, I was full of anxiety. I was full of like wondering what people thought of me and like my relationships and, you know, just as we are. Yeah, I don't know, as
Yeah.
teenagers and 20s and all of that. And coming back to school, it's still there, right? It's still there, those voices in your head and all of that. But what I realized I found is that I had learned some tools to manage it better. And so when those kind of things started to happen, and I could sort of have a little distance on it, as I think as an older person, to have this say, sort of a distance and say, oh, look at me. See how upset I'm getting about this or that. Calm down. So there's that one thing, like just being able to manage my mind a little better as an older person. And two, I just I love being around energy and young people and seeing what they're doing instead of looking at them and saying, well, when I was a kid, I just hate that. I want to like understand what is jazzing them up, what is like lighting their fire, what is exciting for them. And they have different world to live in than we did. Ours was hard in different ways.
Absolutely.
In the world now is difficult. It always is both hard and fun. you
But
know.
how that opens up our minds, right? Like we are exposed to these individuals who have a different background than us, have a different upbringing than us. And we can look back on it and reminisce, but it doesn't stop us from learning about our world, does it?
Yeah. And just seeing how the things that started in that's why I love our history. And you do too. We have this
Yes.
in common. That's why I love it, because you can look back and say, okay, what is happening right now has a trail that you can follow back and see those connections in the artists that lived in the 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 1900, 1800, 1600, 1500. Like right now, I'm reading about Hermeticism and Renaissance magic. And I'm like,
Yes.
this was the beginning of the hippie movement, right? These guys
Right.
were the first hippies. And or rather, the hippie movement and all of the things that's happening now, like sacred geometry and all that, had its beginnings in ancient cultures and in Islam and in the which then was sort of rediscovered in the classical period through the Renaissance. And then they wrote about it, and so it's sort of really this fascinating way to learn about your own moment when you look back at history.
Well, and it just substantiates this whole idea that history repeats itself. And artists are in that moment, speaking to that moment when we create, no matter what era we happen to be in.
Yeah. And I do think it's really important for so many artists are, political and activists, and that's wonderful. They're living in their moment. Like it's the zeitgeist, right?
Hmm.
The time ghost,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you're in the time, you're in your own time, and you're just like living in that era, right?
Yeah.
And that's important. And then some artists kind of have a view of like bigger or the universe or something that's so I love the idea of like talking about your moment as an artist and having your specific experience, but also talking about the universal and the larger picture at the same time, which is such a weird, I call this scale switching.
Okay.
And it just like one of these words that I use in my own private vocabulary with myself. The idea of like you're focusing on specificity, and then suddenly you can go to the universal in the cosmos. And this is one thing that may separate us from animals. I don't know. Maybe birds can do this too, right? Maybe this is something they share. I don't know because I'm not a bird usually, but You know what I mean? It's like skill
Yes.
pushing. Humans can go back and forth from the tiny to the grand that quickly. And that's just such a pleasure as an artist.
And through that, though, doesn't it bring into this idea of imposter syndrome?
I think so.
We get these moments where we don't trust. You talked about how you threw your early art away, like, oh, no,
Yeah.
this hasn't been trained. Artists really need to embrace that imposter syndrome, don't they?
Well, yeah, for sure. And I did a podcast and I kind of like thought about this idea of the artistic voice as having kind of three parts. So the first part I think of, when we're kids and just what marks our bodies make, like our crayons and, our first marks on the canvas. And I call that the essence, right? So your voice has the essence of who you are. And then the evolution is when you learn how to draw, right? You have teachers, you have mentors, you copy things, copying comics when you were a kid, learning all of that learning and that evolution of your skills and your mastery is there in that. And that sort of like is different. Your essence kind of shifts into this evolution stage. But I really also see it as then having this edge stage when you kind of mature and you can look back on both and you kind of go back to your essence and embrace that instead of pushing it away, right? Because I hated the marks. I wanted to learn to draw like everybody else. But then when I realized like, oh, okay, this edge is where I'm pushing things, where I'm kind of taking my own voice and learning and then putting into some new direction and new things. And that's the edge. But the idea of imposter syndrome is basically the concept is the thought. It's a thought. It's a mental state of thinking that other people don't think that you're as capable they perceive you to be, right? So one of my main points is that in this embrace imposter syndrome class is that all of those thoughts are just swirling around in your head and they're just thoughts. That's just the first part of it. But the idea of embracing it is like embracing the shadow with Jung when we're doing our Jungian work. The shadow is what we have to address and face and love and be aware of. And so all of those voices, the imposters, like, oh, can I do this? Can I be an artist? Right? Like it's a mask we put on, like we're faking it. That's exactly what we should do. We should fake it. We should put the mask on. We should look at that mask and say, how can I zhuzh this mask up?
So does that mask sort of like become as we were as a child, where we would pretend who we were?
Of course.
And we believed it wholeheartedly as a child.
Yeah.
And then, we start to get older and we start to question ourselves because the reality in our head isn't always the reality that's outside of our head.
Right. And I see those two parts. It's like there's the imposter syndrome that's comes from, our own thoughts and our own self and our own, growth as a human being, but
Mhm.
also the parts that come from society, family, birth order, gender, economic situation, education, all of the culture, all of those things. So there's kind of a two-part influence on our imposter syndrome. And I like to break those down really clearly and have people kind of write out like all of these influences and these different voices to look at them and become aware of them.
Obviously, imposter syndrome's misconceptions that we have of ourselves. What's the most common one that you see in the world of art for a misconception?
Okay, wow. Well, there are so many. And, I talk about cognitive biases, right? We have these biases and these different ways that these little tricks that our brain is always playing on us. You can call them cognitive biases, thought errors, or other names for them. But say one is recursive knowledge. Okay, that's a cognitive bias that says, I know this so well. I know this thing so well. Like, doesn't everybody know this? So this is why teachers don't share their most basic knowledge with people sometimes because they think that everybody knows it, everybody's done this. And so the curse of knowledge is the more you know, the less you think you have to share about that knowledge. So as we learn, we go through that evolution stage of like knowing how to draw, learning how, and even that knowledge of a kid as a kid, like the kid knows so much, right? We know how to draw. We have those marks. We think we have to know if we take all these classes. It's all there. And so once you get to the edge, you realize it and you go, oh, see that edge, like, or that essence of me. That's the most important part. That's where my knowledge is. That's kind of the curse of knowledge. And what happens when people get out into the world, I don't know, because everyone says, well, you look at the internet and you're trying to do what everybody else does. I don't know if everybody's doing that. I don't know, because I'm not in their brains. But
Sure.
you do see trends. And what you see is, I think, people trying to learn from each other. That person did this and it, quote unquote, worked. So I'm going to try it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do hope that what people do is then take what they learn and go back to those earliest marks and the earliest way of thinking and trusting themselves and trusting their own process. And I think that's one big part of this that is part of imposter syndrome is really, yes, learning what you can learn from other people, but also then at the end of that hero's journey, knowing that you're coming back to yourself and that essence of yourself, which is the real truth of who you are as a human being and what you want to share with the world and what you want to make is valid, important, and someone else out there will love it, no matter what it is.
It's interesting how you laid this out because it sounds very similar to what I do in my classroom. Right now, we are at the final project and it's about narrative, telling a story. And in this moment in class, I'm trying to guide them to what inspires you, who inspires you. And coupled with that, I'm teaching them about appropriation.
Right.
Because many times when we look at someone who we are inspired by or want to mimic or any of those kinds of things as humans, it can feel like we're an imposter because
Yes.
it's not ours. And this is why I wrap the appropriation into this because it's about, yes, this idea might be somebody else's, but how did I make it my own?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that you're talking about appropriation because it's such a huge issue in the world, always, forever in history, but
Yeah.
also right now, and also because of the internet and everything. I heard your podcast with Brown, is her last name.
Oh, Anika Brown, the
Anika. Oh my gosh.
cultural
Yes.
appropriation. Yes.
That was so good. So I hope everybody goes back and listens to that episode. But I loved how she talked about it. And this idea of, yes, we all have our voices, but also there's an honoring and a learning from others and a communication and a connection. So when you're, maybe if you're doing something that really does pull in a totally different culture's ideas or images or something, reach out to someone in that community.
Yes.
So to talk to them because you'll learn something. And it's not like you're asking for permission, in a sense. We as artists, we always pull all sorts of influences, but in
Right.
a sense you're like, can I learn from you about what this idea or this concept means to you? Here's what it means to me. And let's see if we can find ways to have a conversation around it.
Anika and I have been friends for a number of years, and she really is my go to when I'm wondering if I'm crossing a line about culture or stepping into an area that's not appropriate for me, for who I am and what my background is. But she has helped me learn the appreciation and how that becomes a spark of creativity. And don't be afraid of that. And that could also be an imposter sort of feeling too, couldn't
Totally.
it?
Yeah. Well, and also, like a man writing in a woman's voice or a woman's writing in a man's voice, a white person writing in a black person's voice, and et cetera. I think as artists, we should try to do those things, right? We should attempt to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and understand what it's like from their point of view. And so there's both, all sides of this conversation to bring to each other and to learn and ask questions and like, okay, Anika, and James, what if you two were to take your masks off? Black woman, white man, and then switch them. Like, let's write in each other's voices and see if we can learn what's up here and what's in here and what we go through and how we can understand each other better. And maybe
Yes.
other people at the same time.
Yeah, it's a great thing. It
But
really is a great thing when we allow ourselves that moment with other people.
yeah, so true. Well, just one other thing about that, like right now, there was this great show at the Met, I think, or MoMA, I can't remember. And it was a digital show of these Native American artists, and they created a situation where they would project the Native American, a current contemporary person in regalia, onto a classic painting. And then it was on the internet. And I will give you the link to the artists. And it was sort of like this great bombing of, of like bringing this Native American art into classical American landscape and things. And so it was to bring up how the Native Americans had to obviously put up with tragedy and terror and terrible things in history, and also are still suffering from these things, and at the same time reinventing themselves to create this incredible new future looking art, future facing art, and realizing there are teachers, right? And so to be open to learning from each other, and I want to learn about the Native American ways at the same time. I don't want to open that door unless they're willing to teach me. You know what I mean? My best friend growing up is half Ojibwe and half white. So she has her family over here that is horsemen and ricers and, beater and beating and all of this, like her dad made drums and, all these things. And then her mom's side, who was, classic, like white woman, America, and from Scotland, and Amy's right in the middle. Hi, Amy. And she's right in the middle, right? And so I always like love to look at her family and how they deal with all this stuff. It's hilarious, at the same time, and fun and beautiful.
But it is about having these communications, having these conversations, and being open to others, which that's a whole nother episode.
Right. I know we're going down rabbit hole.
Oh my gosh. You know what, Shannon, I want to kind of shift to this idea of time and structure in the artist's life. And you have a phrase, change your relationship with time, that I find to be hugely powerful. What does that mean to the average artist?
Okay. Well, yes, this has been huge in my life. I am very goal oriented, and all my friends have always said that. It's like, oh, you do so many things, you set goals. And I've always had, when I was a kid, New Year's Eve, my birthday, right? And we've talked about this. I used to set 10 goals every New Year's Eve in 10 areas. So I would have like this obscene, absurd, like 100 goals every year. And some would be small, some would be big. But I love time, scheduling, and I've always done that. But then also, I'd always kind of like felt rushed and urgent and like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. When am I going to get some time just to myself? All of those thoughts. And I realized as I was learning to be a life coach, I was doing thought work, which is a whole other rabbit hole. But this is part of it, that really looking at my thoughts and really realizing that I could manage my mind around anything in my life. And time was a big one. And so I realized that if I could manage the thoughts that I had about time, I could change my life. So like just transform this concept of time in my life. And so this is one of the scale switching things. We think about minutes and what am I going to do next? And how long, am I late? And all of these things.
Always checking our watch.
Always like focusing on time all the time. And then pulling back and saying, wait a second, how long is a million years? A lifetime, 60 years, 80 years, 100 years, millions of years, billions of years. How long is it taken for, this rock to roll up onto the shore Right. And here I
Yeah.
am tossing it all the way back into the water.
Yeah.
Right. So this idea of managing your mind and understanding what time is and managing your mind around your concept of time and intentionally creating thoughts around what you want time to feel like for you. Because sometimes I want to feel the urgency. Here's an example, and you're a writer, so you'll get this. I'm writing a book, and my writing partner, my friend Kevin, we talk to each other every week, and he'll read me poems, and I'm reading him my chapters of my book. So in this 16-week process up to my MFA show, I just threw in there, I'm going to write a chapter of my book every week. I love to be under that pressure. I set timers, I do the Pomodoro method. It doesn't matter how many words I write, I'm just going to write whatever I end up writing for that week, and I'm going to read it to him. But I found out this. I read this little part of a chapter about me going to Scotland to visit my birthplaces of my great-great-grandparents. And I wrote this little scene about me walking into a pub and feeling like I was an American in American Werewolf in London. He walks into the pub and like silence. And I walk into the pub and I see all these cute Scottish soccer players playing pool and all their girlfriends are along the side. And I just like break that down and end up realizing like, okay, she's the top wolf here. She like go meet her first. She'll tell you which one of the boys is single, and I wrote that. It was fun and funny. And I tried to put details in. And then I read it to Kevin and I realized like what I do when I'm on a timer and when I'm on urgency is I lay down the basic story. I lay down that I'm on the timer. I'm going to just lay it down and set it out. And then I can shift my view on time itself. And I can say, I have luxurious amounts of time. And I'm going to spend time in the pub looking at the details, telling you what color the stripe on their jerseys were, telling you that one of the boys was so beautiful. He had this red hair and this Roman nose, and that she and I ordered half pints because that's what girls do. And we clinked our pints once she told me which ones were single, right? So it's like the details and the slow reveal of the story all comes from my outlook and my thoughts about time.
Well, and this turns into the shift as artists for us to get away from feeling like we don't have enough time, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And one of my other thoughts, you can borrow this, and I borrowed it from one of my coaches, is I have luxurious amounts of time.
I love that.
Right? And sometimes I just have to remind myself when I feel that anxiety rising or when I'm like, oh, what do I have to do? I can just say, breathe, and just say, I have luxurious amounts of time. That feels better. Then I go into the studio. I take my time. I look at the color of the paint. I mix my colors. I clean my studio. I think, I sit and write in my journal. And then I paint. And when I paint, I take it slow. I don't have to rush. Sometimes I then say, you know what? I want to have some energy right now. So I'm going to set a timer and paint for 10 minutes and make some cool marks in a different time zone.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? But I have luxurious amounts of time to do that.
With photographers, we are so quick with digital and it speeds us up. And when I run into someone like that is like, I have no time, I said, go back to film. Because it puts you in that moment and you have to see everything instead of fixing it in post, right? You capture 1,000 images and now you're rifling through 1,000 images later. When think about if you just put film in that camera and you slowed down and instead of 1,000 images, you've got 10. That's luxurious for me. That's
and the main point to this, though, I think, is we can choose. It's not a circumstance in the world that time goes so fast and that we're behind under the gun and that we don't have enough time. That's not true. That's just a thought that we have and that our society has. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we have a choice to decide right now, I want to feel time is slow. And right now I want to feel time is fast and exciting. And there's an interesting phenomenon. They say when you're younger and you don't have a lot of stimulus, time feels slower. Just think of lying on the grass, if you ever had this opportunity as a kid, and looking at an ant or a blade of grass.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like time went so slowly because our brain wasn't full of so much. And now, because we know more at 60, it's like, oh my gosh, 5 years just went by like that. So we have a choice on how we feel about time and how it's a tool. Time is a tool. The past is a tool to help us remember, to create our identities, to have beautiful sort of a life in the past in our imagination. So the past is memory and imagination. The future is imagination. And that's a tool as well to help us hope, to help us make plans. I think that good mental health is two things: a creative outlet and a plan.
Wow.
That's what time does. We use the tools of the past and the future to create this stuff.
I love, it's almost as if you've fed me cues to parts of questions that I have, because if we can control these things, right? This imposter syndrome, like, and get our head in the right space. And if we can then play with time,
Yeah.
that helps us find our voice and identity as an artist, doesn't it?
Oh, I love that. Well, tell me about yourself. I'm sure you have an example of this.
Well, I have had the bizarrest resume, similar to you, right? I've been all over the place. But now here I am. I'm in my late 50s and I'm an artist. And that is an identity that I recognized that I have had my entire life. Now that I can embrace that, I'm feeling that the voice that has been there from my moments in time of creation come through. And so now here I am, able to feel confidence in what it is I'm doing, creating, and who I am.
Yeah.
And it's been,
own it,
well,
That's
and it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
And, I think back, shoot, I should have done this 30 years ago.
Right. But this is the thing. All of those hard times that we go through, all the just, oh my gosh, agony. I call it the wisdom of the abyss. Everything we go through as we're going around our hero's journey over and over, we have to have. And like, that's what really makes us us and makes us better. So all of those hard times, all of the times when I threw my paintings away, Monet did the same thing. He would stand on the riverbank and paint. And he said, color is my agony and my pleasure, or something like that. And he would paint, and then he would just like throw a canvas into the river. And his assistant would have to like fish it out because he was so frustrated. But it's just, you keep failing forward, then thinking about it differently. And as you get older, you go, oh, that's right. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. Every moment was perfect.
Right now, perfection is something I think many of us struggle with. And when we realize that we don't have to be perfect is when that identity and that voice really comes out.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly.
Shannon, as we start to wrap up this session together, I have to say I have so enjoyed this. This has been exciting for me to hear your thoughts on these things.
And you too. I just love this conversation.
If someone is feeling stuck, like right now, in one of the topics, the time, the imposter syndrome, what's a tiny, small step they could consider doing to maybe move them past that?
I love acronyms, so I'm always making them up. And one of my favorite ones recently is math, MATHH.
Okay.
Do the math. Okay. Do the math. And MATHH means my ability to handle honesty. MATHH. My ability to handle honesty. And this works for me in so many ways. When I write down my thoughts, so we call it a thought download. And every morning, it's morning pages, right, from the Artist Way or whatever. And this thought download is part of this idea of my ability to handle honesty. Do the math with your thoughts. Write down your thoughts and see what's actually in there. these sentences that are actually in your brain. Only then can you really understand what's going on for you, because a lot of times they're just working in the background. It's like, oh, you're not good enough. Or why are you doing this? Why are you even trying to do this? You're going to be great at this. Oh, you're not. You wish you could do this. It's going to be so hard. I think I'm not going to do that because I'd rather watch Blacklist again. There are 10 seasons after all. I mean, of course, at night, like I'm done at 6:00. So yes, I'm in the middle of Blacklist. But when I am working, I get up early. Maybe it's an age thing, but I get up at like 6:00 and I sit and write in my journal and I do a thought download. And it's so helpful. It just helps me look at what's in my brain. And I think that's the first step.
Shannon offers a masterclass in a lot of what we have talked about today. So if you're an artist or a creative who feels like you're being held back by imposter syndrome, this class really is a turning point. It's a deep dive into the number one issue that quietly shapes and often limits who we are in our creative lives. Her class, it's grounded in proven research and powerful thought work methodology, as you've heard. This class unpacks the history and psychology of imposter syndrome, why it shows up for artists, and how it impacts your confidence, your voice, and your willingness to be seen. So if this is where you're at, please, please, please check out the show notes. There are links there that will get you to Shannon's website where you can sign up for this session. Shannon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And that class on my homepage is free.
I love a bargain.
And then I've created the deep dive class is a paid class, and that's the deep dive class, but you get the free class. I go through just a couple of the first points and really kind of get you centered and figured out where you are within this idea of imposter syndrome. Then you can go further if you want to take the full class, of course, with a discount from that for taking that free class. So it's fun. I'm learning how to do this stuff.
Shannon, thank you so much for your time today. This has really been powerful. I appreciate it. And your wisdom that you brought. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I just love what you do. I love your podcast, and I'm so glad we met. And
same.
It's been fun to connect to Capricorns.
And I'm looking forward to following your pathway as you leave your MFA program. Oh my gosh.
Thank you. Oh, just one other thing. On my homepage, you can sign up for my newsletter. And I'm doing a blog every week on this process. So 16 weeks of creating an MFA show. Week 1 is week 0. It's called week 0. And then week 1. That's all of the farther I've gotten so far.
I am definitely going to go get signed up for that. I can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you, Shannon. What an incredible conversation with Shannon Borg. Her insights on imposter syndrome, the artist's inner voice, and redefining our relationship with time are the kind of ideas that stay with you long after the episode ends. If you connected with Shannon's message, be sure to check out the show notes for links to her free introductory class on imposter syndrome, plus the full deep dive course for those ready to go further. And while you're there, you can sign up for her weekly blog chronicling her MFA show. Trust me, it's a journey worth following. Thank you for spending your time with us today. And check out our new podcast, Art Happens, the divine mess of art history, where we explore the masterpieces and the beautiful messes behind the art world. Trust me, this isn't your grandma's art history class. And of course, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of Lattes Art. This has been Lattes Art, sponsored by J Squared Atelier, and I'm James William Moore. Stay inspired, keep creating, and I'll see you next time.